and welcome to our first edition of The Root of the Story. Your host today is Regina Montgomery, and we're going to be looking at different stories in our community and meeting some interesting people and some businesses and finding out more about their backstory, what makes them who they are, because as we know, everybody has a story. And today we are joined by Diana Hollister, who is going to tell us her story, which is really unique and very creative. So thank you so much, Diana, for joining us today on The Root of the Story. And I have to admit, thank you so much for being my guinea pig, because you're my first guest, and I appreciate you didn't see the behind the scenes what happened, but we had a few technical things, but we got them all straightened out. So this is going to be a smooth show, and it's going to be interesting. So Diana, I see behind you a really cute little, illustration of a dinosaur, or sorry, not a dinosaur, it's a dragon. It says right on it, dragon, a dragon with wings. So let's talk a little bit about who this is and where did this inspiration come from?
Okay, so this is Ricky the dragon. I'll bring it up a little closer so you can have a better view. And the lady in the picture is Agatha. And the backstory is, watch that fall down now. Wouldn't that be funny? And conk me on the head. So over a year ago, I was working, as many people were working, and in a before and after school program with 26 children in a classroom, sharing a classroom at one of the local schools in Orangeville. When everything happened with the pandemic, one day we were in the classroom, the next day there was nothing. And I was trying to rack my brain thinking about the children and how traumatic it was and how was I going to reach them? So I was coming up with ideas. The children used to love it. Some of them would shout, "Diana, tell us a story." And I would just pick up an item. It could be a rock. It could be a dinosaur, anything in the classroom. And I would just go with it. And then they would chime in and the story would become very interactive. And so this is how this all came about. It was really just, I'm going to try one story. How do I do it? I had to teach myself how to use YouTube, which was honestly quite pathetic, but I got there in the end. And in the beginning, the old lady, she was, because I like to do voices, and the children used to love it if I would sort of portray a witch. So Agatha was a bit grumpy, but then the stories kind of changed after the first story. Some of the parents, I was able to, through my last employer, to get feedback. And the children wanted another story about Ricky the dragon and Agatha. And that's how it sort of started. And before I knew it, there were 8 stories. And I thought, I want them to travel in their community. I want them to travel to places that they might identify with. So they go to a farm, they go to a circus, they go to the CN Tower. They actually go to Agatha's 60th birthday party. And the idea was Ricky the dragon and Agatha are 2 characters that you wouldn't think would be friends. But he goes to her birthday party, and he also goes on all of these adventures. And within the stories, because of being inclusive, I tried to make the characters, the side characters, also a little bit more interesting. They come from different countries. They all don't look the same. There's a lot of teamwork going on in each of the stories. And pretty much that's how it started. So what else can I tell you?
Well, I think I just want to ask you, you said that Agatha has this witchy sound, or that you were making these witchy sounds. I think we all want to hear the witchy sound. Can you hear it?
So in the I have to say her voice sort of changed as I continued with the stories. But in the beginning, when he flies across the ocean, because he lives in a cave on a cliffside with his mother. So his mom's a single parent. And as he flies, he sees her house. And when he finally knocks on the door with his talon, which is his nail, there was a lot of repetition for the children too. She actually says, "Who's there? What are you doing knocking at my door?" That sort of thing. But then as the next time that he goes to the house, Agatha's calmed down a bit, and she's actually very friendly. And, sometimes you can judge a book by its cover, or you think a person is in a certain way. Like one of the things that Ricky notices about her house is her windows are very tall. And he says, and they're very dirty. So at some point, funny enough, in one of the stories, while they're waiting for a pie to bake, they clean these long windows. They're tall and short. So she's cleaning the bottom of the windows, and he's cleaning the top because he can fly up to the top. So they do become friends. And other characters from abroad, including Ricky's mother, she always hears about the stories, but eventually she flies to the CN Tower on one of their adventures. And then even with the CN Tower, there's a lot of history that I don't know about the CN Tower. I've been to the CN Tower, but I found out some amazing history about it. With Justin Trudeau's dad, Pierre Trudeau, and all the politicians and all sorts of secret things that are in the walls of the CN Tower that they had placed in there to be opened at a certain time. Were you aware of that, Regina? Did you know that story?
No, but just fun facts. My father was a sprinkler pipe fitter, and he helped in the construction of the CN Tower. But
amazing.
Maybe he was sworn to secrecy and was allowed to tell us those things.
Well, no, that is actually, when I Googled the CN Tower, that is actually one of the things that they bring up about this time capsule. And there's letters from children, there's letters from politicians, there's money, that sort of thing. So one of the things when I was doing my story is I was thinking, okay, how can I incorporate to make it interactive? So I came up with the idea of using artifacts, or I guess you could call it props. So I would, after we visited the CN Tower, and Agatha actually goes out on the edge walk with her daughter. So there's a whole, description of what happens there. But I got a chest of stuff and I started putting things into it so that the children could identify, there's lots of things that you can have in your house. It could be a photograph of the family. It could be a dollar bill, or not a dollar bill, a loonie, so I put things in to show the kids, and I said I was going to go and bury it in my back garden because obviously I wasn't at the CN Tower and we couldn't visit the CN Tower. But we visit. One of my favorites is they dive into the ocean. And I've tried to make Agatha more of a character where you wouldn't think it because she's 60, but she has all of these amazing friends that she has. So she goes down in a submarine, and Ricky can actually dive into the ocean because he's got big lungs. And when they get down there, of course, there's a school down there of all the different creatures. And then they go and they visit a shipwreck. And one of the things when we worked, the children would always get very upset if they didn't have a partner. So of course there's one of the sea creatures who doesn't have a partner. Well, guess who volunteers? Ricky wants to be the partner, right? And they find something special down there. I almost want to leave that as a tease, although I've been teasing as well that they find some, spoiler alert, Easter eggs, even though we just finished Easter. Then another thing is they go to a farm, and when they're going to the farm, Ricky thinks that Agatha's going to fly on his back, but in actual fact, she tells him, she says, I'm a pirate. Of course she is, but she flies a vintage airplane. So they fly to this farm, but when they're looking over the farm, and I was thinking of all of the community farms in the area, like Downey's farm, they see a maze, but the maze, Agatha's looking down at, and her grandson Nick says, I know what that is. And it's a maze that's made like the Canadian flag. So I wanted to sort of incorporate bits of Canada. Like, this is a Canadian story. This is a community story. And there's always this running theme in all of the stories because there's a thing about pies. So they love eating pies. When he first meets Agatha, she's baking a pie. and she invites him back to the house another time to make a pie, but she forgets about it, of course. But when he gets very upset and he's crying, and so they go to the local farmers market, which makes me think of Orangeville and the farmers market and how you can get everything there. It's not just pies, you can get meat and samosas and honey and all of these wonderful things. And so, you know, all of this was going through my head. But with the pie, with the running theme, when they go and visit this farm, there's a pie eating contest, of course. And they all go into it, but they have to put their hands behind the back. So they're eating the pie. So I was trying to get things that could make the children laugh, that could make them completely forget about what's going on right now. And especially now that we're now in lockdown again. Oh, you know, my biggest obstacle is, how can I reach these children?
So can I just ask, where does the inspiration for these stories come from? Like, maybe tell us a little bit about your background, because it's not easy to just create a story. I mean, not only are you creating the story, you're acting it out on your YouTube channel with your videos, you're drawing the photos. Like, that's a lot of artistic, you know, experience to have. So tell us a little bit about your background and where it's actually all coming from.
Okay. So I'm actually a registered early childhood educator, and I'm a nursery nurse examination board. And that just means they've changed that name. That was years ago, donkeys years ago. So that's really an early childhood educator from England. That's where I did my training. In fact, just a little bit of history, Lady Diana did the NNEB, exactly the same training that I did. But of course, she was in London and I was in Southern England. So that's, you know, everything, you knew that she was a nursery nurse teacher at the time. So I've got the educational background. And when you are a registered early childhood educator, you take a multitude of workshops. And some of those workshops were about how to communicate with children, how to emote. And one of them was actually, I did one that was about storytelling that I took. And during that, I remember, you know, we all had to, they actually gave us a rock each, funny enough, and we had to tell the story about the rock. And so everybody told a little bit. And then when it came to mine, I, you know, was telling them pretty much it was like, you know, it was treasure. And there was a shipwreck and so on and so forth. And afterwards, the instructor, she said, oh, I wanted you to go on. But of course, rather than take over the whole, you know, workshop, which of course is what I like to do, I had to zip it. So I think the other thing is that I love seeing the reactions of the children. And some of the children, I mean, I had one little boy who would come from his classroom. All the kids came from the different classrooms into our feeder before and after school classroom at this school. And he had always had something had happened during his day, because he'd had a hard time. It really, you know, gets your heart, right? And he was loud and boisterous, and he would run in the classroom and he'd go, Diana, tell us a story, really loud. And I'd be like, okay, you know, all right, I can hear you. No names because of confidentiality. But it just sort of like came to me. I know I can do it. How am I going to do it? And honestly, you know, you hear about all of these, you know, I'm going to sound like a bit of a fool now, but celebrities who said they had a lot of ideas in the middle of the night. And without a word of a lie, I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would grab a piece of paper because I think, oh, that's a good idea, and jot down a whole bunch of ideas. And the next day, I would just come up with a story. And that is honestly how I did. I think I did all 8 within a 3-month period, which sort of surprised me, but I was happy. I revisited the stories just because I was talking to you, Radina. And honestly, my husband said to me, he said, what are you laughing at? And I said, I'm laughing at myself. I said, because I'm listening to one of my stories, because I can't remember the story completely because it was a year ago that I did it. But I said to him, I said, but I'm making myself laugh. So I thought, this is great. I want to share them with the children. I want them to be able to travel because they can't physically go, but virtually they can travel.
So let's talk a little bit about kids' mental health then. When it comes to, I mean, you've worked in the classroom and now you're not in the classroom, which has got to be tough because I can tell from your passion, you really love it. So you can't physically see these kids. So there's probably two parts to this question. I'm thinking that what you're doing is also good for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the kids' mental health in enjoying these stories, because I think you mentioned something about, it's an outlet and a break for parents as well, because now the kids are back in our region and in Peel and Toronto, they're all back in home online learning again.
Right.
So that's got to be tough on parents, especially when they're probably trying to work and do their own things. So talk a little bit about the reasoning behind that. I mean, this is really geared towards the kids, right?
You're right. It is geared primarily towards the children. But I also, I wanted to also reach the parents, to be honest, because I can't imagine what it is like. Well, in some ways I can't imagine what it's like because I've been in that classroom setting with the children and I know what their attention span is like. But I can't imagine being a parent working from home or going out to work and coming home and then having to deal with the children who are absolutely, this is devastating for them. Children are social beings. They want to be with their friends. And it's very difficult, I think, for them to carry on and get through it. So when we look at adults, we have outlets of entertainment. It might be cooking, it might be golfing, it could be tennis, whatever it is. It could be writing, it could be a journalist like yourself. So this is a way for children to escape, but it's also a way for the parents to escape, because I wanted to do something that gave them, the stories range, they're short, anywhere from 10 to, I think it was 13 minutes. And the timeline gives parents time to just type it in, walk away. They might be able to hear me in the background or hear their kids. I'm hoping that they'll hear them laughing or interacting. But then they can go and have a cup of tea or a glass of wine or a chat with, whether it's husband and wife, whoever the family is, that family unit. It might be grandparents. It might be two mums or two dads or whoever it is. I wanted to give back for the children and for the parents. And yeah, my heart goes out to them. I can't imagine what people are going through right now.
So the characters that you created, they're based on people right? Like there's a little bit of, I'm sure there's people, friends.
How did you know that? Yes.
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of listening a little bit. I know you well enough to know that there was a couple little clues you dropped.
Yes.
So, I guess what's interesting about that is when you create characters that are kind of based on people, if the people figure out that they're part of the story, what's kind of their reaction? Have they had a reaction to that?
Well, here's the thing. I did create, most of the characters are actually not people that I know, but they are people whose names I know. And the reasoning behind that was because with my wonderful memory, sometimes I had to think of, for example, Ricky's mom, her name is Isabel, and my mummy, her name was Isabel. And then two of the children, this is going to sound crazy, but I thought, okay, I remember my best man at my wedding and my best friend who I've known for many, many years, Susan and Tony. That's how I remembered the names, because sometimes I thought, I'm going to tell the story, and without a word of a lie, I know I'm going to say, oh, and then Peter said, and I could see the kids going, that's not Peter, that's Tony, to the screen. And by then I've already, made a mess of it. So some of the characters, like, I know she won't mind if I say this, but my girlfriend who I used to live with, whose name is Susan. So she's one of the children. And she's Scottish. And of course, I would always take off her Scottish accent with her family and her. And she would always thought it was pretty funny. But in one of the stories, Hamish comes from Scotland. And of course, Hamish is wearing a kilt, which Ricky the dragon, Ricky is a young dragon, so sometimes he'll do things that are inappropriate, which all children do, or they say things that are inappropriate. So of course sometimes children will stare at something if it's like, why is that looking like that? So he asks questions that may not be appropriate, politically correct, but we can give them an answer, because he wants to know, why is he wearing a skirt? So Hamish is like, okay, the new, I'm wearing a kilt, that sort of thing. And then Agatha's children have her grandkids are married. They're different, and he wants to know why they look different. So Agatha tells him, well, it's because my daughter's married to, of course, my brain's going to go where his name is in the story. But the moral of the story is, well, where am I going with this? I'm rambling now. What was the question?
The question was about the characters and where they come from, real life experiences.
Yeah. So they do and they don't. Some of them were brand new, like Tommy the Whale. And there are characters, for example, when Agatha goes down into the ocean and she's in the submarine, but the submarine's in certain colors. Well, the colors are of the Spanish flag. And that is because my mum, Isabel, was from Spain. So there's little snippets. There are characters in the story, my son and my daughter, who I did ask their permission. I told them, I said, I've kind of written some stories where you're sort of in it. So my daughter is the daughter who goes to the CN Tower with Agatha. My son is the grandson who goes flying in the airplane, and he takes with him his little stuffy because his stuffy makes him feel better. So there's parts of the story where children will identify with that because they would come into the classroom with a blanket or a stuffy. And we always had, it was okay. It was like, yeah, come on in, bring it in, it's fine. In our before program. So yeah, the characters, there are some, the names are there, but they're not necessarily the same people, and they might look completely different.
So what are your hopes with this storytelling, these stories? What are you hoping to do? I know you put them up on social media, and you have them on YouTube. I'm assuming that the kids from your program have the links and are watching it.
Yes.
But what sort of is the big picture? What is the hope with this? I mean, I'm thinking you want to reach a broader group of kids other than the ones that were at your school.
Yeah, so I do. I was trying to find a way, racking my brain, of how to reach other people. And to be honest with you, before the pandemic happened, I wasn't what you would call a social animal. I mean, I joined Facebook. I'm on Twitter, although I haven't tweeted anything yet. I joined Instagram, all things that I sort of had to learn how to do. But one of the things that I did learn was, because I have relatives in England, and I have relatives in Southern England and Northern England, and relatives in Spain, when I put these stories that were on YouTube on Facebook, I suddenly got a message from my cousin, and she said she had passed the story on to her friends who were learning how to speak English. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And then I have a sister in Northern England, a half sister, and she forwarded the stories to all of the children. She's a dance teacher, and she forwarded it to all of the kids in her company. So the little ones, like preschool, I would say preschool up to, I thought it would be like grade 3. But I did also find out I had some 12-year-olds who were watching, which floored me, because I thought, really? Because they just seem to be much younger audience. But I have had feedback from friends here in Orangeville who I did ask permission for, and this one friend, I asked her, her daughter, what did she really like about the stories? And her mother said she would struggle in school to focus. and that auditory was much easier for her than visual. And I thought, wow, I've reached somebody here who's 12, but is getting something from these stories. She loved it. So what I did was sorry, I should turn off my phone. I asked her mom to ask her. I said, at that point, I was starting to come up with ideas for the ocean story. And I said, I want you to pick a sea creature, and I'm going to put it in the story. And so she picked a turtle. And the sea turtle is the turtle that has no partner in line. And Ricky volunteers to be that turtle's partner. So there was sort of like a snippet of community, giving back.
I love how you talk about the diversity and inclusivity and the friendships that are created, because as we can see from the description, and there will be photos rolling throughout this video that you can see of some of the artwork that Diana has done. So talking about that diversity, which is really important, because sometimes in stories they're one way versus the other way. And obviously from your experiences, your life experiences, as well as your experience in the classroom, you've seen a diversity of kids and the backgrounds in which they come from. So the fact that you're utilizing that and speaking to those kids by using real life examples, is really amazing. And I commend you for that, because that's something that's missing a lot in storytelling, right?
Well, I will tell you that just going back just for a minute to the classroom, where we live, we have children from different cultures, but the reality is, of course, the diversity is there, but it's minimal. So we weren't afraid to talk about that in the classroom and get the kids talking about it. But what's really interesting is I was in a classroom where the children were junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten, and the children did not see any difference in their friends if they were a different skin color, if they looked different. The kids actually didn't really see that until, something might come up in the classroom where somebody says something about, if we were doing self-portraits and somebody was looking at somebody else and they said, why your skin color is different. We never shied away from that. We had the conversation. Why? And we made it into why? Where does your mom and dad come from? I'd get a globe and we would look at the country, and then we would sort of expand and keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger, so that person felt like, wow, I'm part of this group. I'm part of this community. And I sort of tried to put that in the stories as well. One of the things you were talking about, my illustrations, and the reality is, a friend of mine, I talked to her a couple of weeks ago, and she said, oh, Diana, she said, I really think you should consider trying to get these into storybooks. And I thought, I don't know. I really like the idea of narrating. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, I've got all of the images are in my head. And so I sort of did I was contacting some companies to see what did that involve, what was the kind of work, what was the cost of doing it. And so with talking to some illustrators, they were telling me how, they do the black and white pictures, and then they add color, and then there was about the cost and what have you. And then I thought, I'm going to just try doing some illustrations myself and see, because it's in there. And I surprised myself. And then one day my husband was looking over my shoulder, and he's looking at I on the edge walk of the CN Tower. So there's a photograph when my daughter was there originally, and it was her cousin and two people that she didn't know and somebody else. So I had to change that. So I superimposed my husband. Got right now a great big white beard at the top of the CN Tower, and had to make the person bigger because he's tall. He's like 6'4", and he was sort of looking at it, and he goes, "Oh, that's quite good." And I'll tell you, for him to say that, it means a lot. And I thought, I'm going to run with this. I'm going to do the illustrations myself. And that's my next goal, is to try and get these, get something published. Why not? Especially during a pandemic.
Why not?
What else am I going to do?
Exactly.
Wow,
this is amazing. I love talented, creative people. I mean, I'm creative in my own way. When it comes to drawing, no, stick people will do. Storytelling is more my thing, but I think it's amazing. I've watched your videos. You bring a lot of life to the videos,
thanks,
a lot
Regina.
of personality to videos. I don't really think they're just for children. I think anybody who just wants to escape into a different world, which is exactly what you're providing, this magical, mysterious world of Ricky the Dragon and all its friends and its diversity. I think it's really open to interpretation for anybody. So I think, honestly, your stories are great for all ages. I really appreciate you joining me today on this. And I think the other thing is we'll put up all the links for people to be able to go to the YouTube channel. On social media, so that'll all be up on this video or else in the description. But you know what, I think it's great that out of all of this, it's been really hard for people. Some people just too much and they've walked away. I mean, you stopped working, you aren't doing what you love anymore, but you at least were able to pivot and find something that you enjoy and to give back to a community, give back to the kids that you were serving. And I think that you got to be commended for that, because in all honesty, sometimes a lot of people, it's just too much, and you didn't have to do it. At the end of the day, you didn't have to do it. So I think that a lot of parents probably thank you for that 10 to 13 minutes of fun, and hearing a kid giggle watching a story, I'm sure, is priceless for them. We're all struggling, they're struggling. And so I think, what you're doing is great, and hopefully you'll continue to do it. I really look forward to seeing a book. Maybe I'll get a signed copy.
Absolutely. The first copy.
Maybe.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I definitely would be certainly something that would be quite spectacular, but who knows what's in the future. Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I'm gonna, so last year I did the stories. This year I decided to do I made these puppets, Jamal and Abigail, and they're just sock puppets, but they learn through play. So I've done a few little tiny videos, but difficult to reach the children because I'm no longer working at my company. But I just thought I'd throw that in there. That was another one where I just wanted to use puppets that were diverse. And there's one about transportation. There's one where Jamal is singing, which is pretty funny. There I go, patting myself on the back again. But again, I want to make them laugh. And I really appreciate everything that you said, Regina, because it's special to me when you say you watched those videos, because I know for some people are like, videos, what are you talking about? Click. So I appreciate it. Appreciate everything that you do. And I've really enjoyed being the guinea pig, having this meeting with you today. And it's been exciting, and I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited too, and I do appreciate it. So we'll put all the information up onto the description on the screen. And thank you so much, Diana. This was great. Learning about your characters was awesome. And until next time, this is going to be a weekly show here on the Facebook channel and the YouTube channel and wherever else we can be found. So join us every week and find out about other interesting people in the community, what they're doing. Some of them have pivoted their businesses because of the pandemic. Some of them have created new businesses because of the pandemic. You never know what you're going to find out, but thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on, what's the name of the show? The Root of the Story.
The Root of the Story.